What we need to see is that God's law has a very good side to it. Paul says the law is good if it is used lawfully. But then he says in the next verse that the law is not made for a righteous man. This means that those of us who are righteous in Jesus by his finished work on the cross should not live by the law. If we live by God's law, or any man-made law, for preservation purposes, and to stay healthy, and to have good relationships, and to be directed in business, or to govern our finances, or for any other such reason, that law is good for us to live by. In short, if it benefits us, it's good for us. But we should not live by the law today for any spiritual purpose, such as to become righteous, or to please God, or to get God to answer our prayers, or to get us to heaven. The law has been set aside, abolished, and rescinded for such purposes, and has been replaced by living the gospel. We saw it earlier. Jesus came to do the will of God by taking away the law, and establishing the new covenant gospel. Hebrews refers to the law as the law of a carnal commandment. This means that the law is addressed and directed to our flesh, not our spirit. We are told to live in the spirit, and not in the flesh, so if we are living by something directed to our flesh, we cannot be in the spirit. Perhaps Paul says it best when he says, "For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has made me free from the law of sin and death." Paul says that when we are in the flesh, or living as a carnal Christian, then sins are produced by the law that we are trying to live by. He calls this as being fruit unto death. He also calls it dead works. He goes on to say that the law is the strength and power of sin. This is why Paul says for us born-again Christians in Jesus to be dead to the law. He repeats this twice, in different places, just so we don't miss it. But many do miss it anyway. He infers if we live by law in our mind, then in our flesh we will be sinners. This is why he says we are cursed if we live by the law. We have a great promise from God from the mouth of Paul. He says that until the law was given to Moses, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed if there is no law. This means that sin was held against us when there was law, but if there is no law, sin is not held against us. Now, today, the law has been taken away, as we are seeing in this section. This being the case, sin is no longer held against us by God. You might say we Christians have diplomatic immunity from sin here on earth. This is discussed in detail in a later coaching session. Hebrews says sin was under the Old Testament, but it is not mentioned as being against us in the New. This is why the gospel is called the better New Covenant. It is like the U.S. Constitution being better than the old Articles of Confederation. The gospel is like the constitution of God's kingdom on earth. It is an astounding blessing to us.